Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Winner's Circle. Today, I'm here with Shannon Copeland from SIB. They are the latest AI Excellence Award winner. And we're here today to talk about AI on the supply chain and in procurement. Shannon, welcome to the Winner's Circle and congratulations on the award.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Russ. We're
So before we
excited.
get too deep into the AI pitch, you guys have been at this a long time. You've been doing cost reduction work long before AI became part of the conversation. Tell us a little bit about what a SIB looked like maybe 5 years ago and what you guys were doing.
Yeah, we've been in business for 35 years. We are a product of a roll up. There's so many firms that have combined with each other. So over the last 5 years, we have combined 7 companies in the procure to pay as a service space. And one of my clients advised me, and so I will take that advice. And they said, okay, when you say procure to pay, describe what it is you actually do. And we actually do the procurement. So we go on behalf of our clients. And it may sound really boring to some of your audience here, but we actually go and do the procurement, meaning we negotiate with vendors and supply chain partners. We do that in I'd like to say, a loving way. It's not acrimonious in any way. Our clients allow us to go and take our experts in those nerdy procurement spend categories and educate the vendors and suppliers what the real needs are for each of our clients. And that ends up helping the clients become more competitive. You can say saving money, you can say it's reducing prices. 99% of the time, it's a lot of things, not just price, that's involved in that, helping our clients become more competitive. So that's what we've been doing for 35 years across as many as 70 different spend categories.
Well,
Our
that's an important role. I mean, I've bought a lot of stuff in corporate America and in business, and it's one of those things that, it's kind of like home buying new tires for your car. You're never sure you're getting a really good deal. You look all over the place, and they all seem to have different options and different variables that make the price, something different than the last guy. And imagine having kind of a central figure to kind of organize that. Just it's got to be that alone's got to be, kind of monumental shift in how they operate business.
yeah, I have an interesting way to brag on our procurement experts, or at least I find it interesting, but our clients do too. And that is, some might believe, and I know you don't, Russ, because now I know your background, that you can just call one of your vendors and say, give me 10% off. And it turns out that that's just not the way the world works. First of all, the vendors are very big, very sophisticated. They are interested in having a deep relationship with their customers. So if you want to more competitively procure from your vendors and suppliers, you have to speak their language too. So you really have to know that space really well, because there are so many different bundles and pricing rubrics that it really pays to have an expert on your side, on your team. Some very large companies have those experts full time. I mean, this is maybe an overused example, but if you're a car manufacturing firm and you're buying steel or aluminum, you have those people on your staff full time doing an amazing job sourcing those raw materials. But when it comes to some core spend and some indirect spend, what's often referred to as tail spend, almost no company on planet Earth can afford to employ experts across all the different spend categories. So that's where we come in, is we help clients because we employ those spend category experts full time. So
Yeah,
it's
I think it makes all the sense in the world to me. It takes that kind of that stress out of you're trying to build a relationship with a vendor, and then you just start, not nickel and diming them for a better term, but you start talking to them about price, and
correct.
it becomes a very acrimonious relationship, and now all of a sudden you're not friends again.
Correct. And that can really, um, our clients are most concerned with, disruption or the avoidance of disruption. And so we make sure not only is there no disruption, as bad of English as that is, but we make sure that things get better. Their operations become more competitive. And so sometimes that might mean a vendor change because another vendor looks at things differently. They have a better offering. They're more innovative. And, on our best day, we're helping vendors become more innovative because they hear about different needs and service offerings from our clients. And then everything gets better from there on out.
Well, and I imagine when you go through the work, I remember, we had outsourced part of our customer service overseas, and as part of that project, you had to have your entire process really mapped out. And as it so was, we didn't, right? So we spent a good 6 months really mapping
Correct.
out processes and making sure we knew exactly how stuff was going to work, because then you had to shift it over to somebody else. And I bet it's the same for you guys, as you're really kind of narrowing down what is it that we need out of these guys? What is it that we're trying to do in the business? And let's not overspend. Let's not go, buy, Salesforce when you need a database or something. Let's narrow it down. And so you almost, just that work alone has got to be able to narrow your spectrum and narrow the playing field of vendors that can support exactly what you need.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a good point. The other story our clients share with us is that when they don't have an expert procuring whatever, they will also note that often they have purchased something from a vendor from a very young person with a rate card. And of course, that can lead to overspending and overbuying. The worst part from the vendor's perspective is that the vendor doesn't get feedback from that client. So the vendor doesn't really know enough about that client. And thus, they don't even have the telemetry, for lack of a better way to say it, to learn from that client. And so we, in some ways, we go above that 20 something with a rate card and we start talking to people who are interested in feedback from the client. So it really is it's why we've been successful. We sell about 900 new engagements a year, and every one of those engagements, we help the client, quote unquote, become more competitive. And we build a deep relationship with those vendors as well. And so they'll take our call the next time.
Yeah. Now, as you said, you've got 30 years of data and experience in this market and helping people, with their supply chain, with procurement. Now you've come into this AI world and developed SpendBrain. Walk us a little bit through kind of what SpendBrain is and kind of how it's transforming that model.
Yeah. So I'll stick with hopefully the unusual way to describe it. And I'll start with, you just said the word data. So historically, our industry has said things like we have lots of procurement data or we have a benchmarking database. Uh, Largely, those days are over. We no longer say we have a benchmarking database because the industry has historically built a benchmarking database by harvesting the pricing from every engagement. In other words, harvesting the pricing data from each client's interactions with its vendors. That no longer is acceptable. Clients do not want you to harvest their pricing data, even if it's anonymized and aggregated. So we do not do that anymore. Now, the knowledge of what's happening in the market with regard to pricing, and then I'll move away from the data piece just for a second, of course, resides in our procurement experts. So our procurement experts, because they're negotiating, 20 to 50 deals a day, they know what's happening in the market. And so they can advise each client, each subsequent client on, hey, do you have a good deal or do you not? But of course, the permutations, again, much more than price, the permutations or the variety of what is purchased from each vendor across businesses is so different that even if you had a benchmarking database, it doesn't do a lot of good. Okay, so that's one, and the reason, of course, I say all this is because AI has made clients keenly aware that data is extremely valuable and that it is private to them. So now what do we say? Now, here's what we're doing with SpendBrain. The first unexpected thing that we're doing with SpendBrain is we're not LLM based. And I'll repeat that because customers may, or your audience may, or other clients or your colleagues may say, wait a minute, they're not LLM based. We use LLMs, but they are no better than the backup singer in the band. The lead singer is an ontology. So we build privately a semantic ontology for each customer. So each client gets a private brain that no one learns from, including us. So we contractually commit to wall off their brain, even from us. So we do not learn from them as well. We do use an LLM in the stack as the quote unquote backup singer, but that's only to vectorize the queries. So that way we can say to the client the following. So this is SpendBrain in a nutshell. Hey, name your own brain. We had a client name their brain Orange, too many syllables, but that's what they wanted to name it, which is wonderful. Name your own brain, and we will build this private instance for you for say Orange, and it will be accurate. So but because we're not LLM based, it's non-hallucinatory. If that those are a lot of syllables there as well. And you can begin conversing with that brain verbally, even in multiple languages as needed. You can converse with that brain starting in about 30 days, and you can have back and forth conversations with that brain in about 4 months. So very accurate, very low cost, very fast to deploy. Um, what do back and forth conversations mean? Meaning the client in 4 to 6 months can start teaching the brain as well verbally. And so, for example, if you wanted to inform the brain on how to calculate something properly, so we take in both unstructured data and structured data into that brain. And so they can begin doing forecasting and budgeting as well. Again, non LLM based and walled off from the world. It's
Well,
that simple.
yeah, well, it makes sense, especially given your clients. You guys are working in public sectors and healthcare, higher ed, and these aren't typically, the bleeding edge technology companies. They're usually, highly regulated. What made these environments kind of the right place to build this?
Think I think we just checked all the boxes. And again, 90% of your audience will just shake their head and go, "Yep, that's what's expected." You can we do I want to go back to what you said earlier. We do work for companies that are 50 million in revenue to 5 billion and above in revenue. We do. But many companies across that spectrum, they're already so sophisticated. And to your point, let's take healthcare, for example. Healthcare is a pressured industry, statement of the obvious. It's a different industry. They really do only think about patient outcomes. They really do. And of course, they care about the health and well being of those frontline workers. But they also know that everything does have to be private. And so I think by having this basic idea that clients should have their own brain at very low cost so that they can get operating leverage from tech finally. We can go into that in a minute. Um, we just kind of naturally check those boxes. Yep, private. Yep, we don't learn from you. Yes, here's the other element. Can I ever take it back? Can I get rid of Shannon one day if for whatever reason I'm tired of his southern accent? Yes, you can get rid of me one day and take it all back. And that's a big deal. It's hard to, well, I won't name names, but if you fill out your data in a typical SaaS platform, which is a bunch of empty fields, sure, you can always extract that data out. We're offering the ability to do much more than that. You can keep your ontology and truly get rid of us if you want to. And of course, our hope is that we're adding enough value that a client never gets rid of us.
Well, yeah, I would think the procurement piece alone is worth its weight in gold. Now, in my experience, again, coming out of marketing departments, sales departments, and tech companies and telecom companies, I would buy stuff from a vendor and I'd stick the contract in a PDF on my file share, and and then I'll send over an invoice over to somebody. It seems like data is all over the place. I mean, I worked for giant companies and there was no central repository. There was no kind of central format or anything, and invoices coming in from all over. And it's such a big fraud, waste, and abuse area for these enterprises. How do you collect all that data in messy data environments and get it all kind of into SpendBrain?
Well, that is a beautiful question, and we have to sort of nudge ourselves to make sure clients are not overwhelmed by our proposition, to your point. And that is because clients' data is everywhere. I mean, there are all these fancy terms. Oh, my data is federated, meaning it's in multiple systems. Um, Part of our secret sauce is we can take the data in any form from anywhere. So we can say to the clients, and we do this every day, hey, leave all your current systems in place, all of your data stores in place. We will API into all that data, pull it in a disorganized way, and then we'll reconnect it in our brain. We have a little bit of an advantage in that we've been doing this as an AI team for 17 years across 3 other previous companies. So I brought my whole team here from Accenture, and we've had a lot of experience. So we have a little bit of an unfair advantage in that we know how to take in that dirty, disorganized data, process it really quickly, connect it all, and build that ontology. And then, of course, start that iteration of humans in the loop. It sounds like a little bit of a marketing scheme, but we just trademarked this term, handcrafted AI, just to make sure people understand that if you don't, our clients particularly, if you don't have humans in the loop, even if you're non-LLM based, it's still not going to work. You got to keep the experts in the loop, and that includes us and our clients. So our clients become a part of that human in the loop, supervised learning, teaching source very quickly. And so we're both working on that brain and making it a lot better.
And now I always, I've talked to financial guys, finance teams for my entire career because we always like to know who we're spending money with because we go try to sell to them too, right? And I know when I talk to the financial guys, you ask them kind of like, how are cost controls going? Are everything kind of good? And the good ones always are kind of like, well, maybe not as good as it could be. But most of the CFOs or financial guys I talk to are, oh yeah, everything's great. When they get spend brain for the first months in that first 4-month period, what do they see that they didn't see before?
Yeah, that's a great question. We had a CFO say to us the other day, and we checked it. Of course, we went out and did some research on our own. But the CFO said, I bet we haven't done a top to bottom audit of all of our spend because some of these companies are big and old, and some of them are doing well. When you're doing well too, that's you kind of referred to that a minute ago. When you're doing well, you might have less of an incentive. But here's what the CFO said. She said, I don't think we've done a top to bottom audit of all of our spend in over 15 years. It turns out when you do the research, you never see in the research months or days, you see years. It's been years since companies actually do a top to bottom of every contract, every invoice. So to your point, imagine this. What our offering does is we're doing that every day in real time, every day. We're looking at every contract, every invoice, every detail. And my joke, and this will be fun for this audience. And I do say this to some clients because they love it. We build a C3PO for your spend. It never forgets anything, speaks multiple languages, if you will, speaks multiple spend category languages at the intersection of every industry. That's important. So in other words, a hospital, and we love the hospital clients because it's easy to understand what you're really doing there and who you're really serving, the patients and the frontline workers. But the hospitals speak a different language. And so if you're building a C3PO for a hospital, it needs to speak their vernacular so they can use it quickly without changing all the underlying systems. So 24/7 a day per day, it's learning. Here's the best part. Clients are very sophisticated. All of them are. Here's what they say. I don't even want to have to ask it questions. I want the C3PO to come back to me when it sees something wrong. So it's true. You need to ask it questions for a year to be simple. 6 months, a year, everybody asks questions. And then sure enough, that brain will come back and say, I found this today. And clients really understand what the power of this can be. They just have to trust that it really is going to work and that it's accurate and low cost.
Well, that's what we all want. We want that proactive brain out there. I was in, as I mentioned, I was in telecom for a long time, and there was a whole industry kind of around billing errors and kind of what you're doing too, the procurement and making sure that your telecom bill was correct. And um, and I also remember getting, literally an AT&T bill on a pallet once.
Yes.
We were buying wholesale at the time, so it was a lot. There
Right.
were a lot of calls, but the fact that you had to go through that and then trying to figure out what was a billing error and all of that. And I imagine that, vendor billing errors are still a significant part of what SpendBrain is catching. How sophisticated is that problem on the vendor side?
Well, there are all kinds of stats. So we have our own stats because we're processing a lot of data every day. There's a lot of research stats. I do believe that this quote around 40% of all invoices across all categories have errors. That stat is holding true for us internally. 40% of some kind of error. It doesn't necessarily mean that 40% of invoices have a cost reduction opportunity or an error, where they're being overbilled or underbilled, but there's some type of error. And our job, of course, now with AI is to detect all of those errors. To your point, vendors, when they discover that we're involved with a client, they are very interested. Vendors, we are not acrimonious with vendors. Vendors employ a lot of people. They feed a lot of families. They do want to have more accurate bills and more accuracy and a deeper relationship. So we have vendors that have also adopted SpendBrain, by the way. That sounds strange, but we have vendors actively seeking us out to adopt the same capability for them so that they can have an accurate view of what's going over to their clients. So the world is catching up fast.
Yeah. Well, I imagine you guys have built this kind of co-creation model with your customers, which I love. I always love that. It's, you're building this for them with their institutional knowledge
Yes,
and working through the product, kind of the process with that. You mentioned earlier that they own the data. And data ownership and explainability seem to be kind of the two biggest terms I'm hearing outside of human in the loop with
yes,
AI companies. How central is that to kind of what you guys are doing?
for sure. I love that explainability term. So they obviously own their raw data, but they also will own that ontology or brain that we build for them as well. We know that, and now with a lot of clients, we do have to meet with the heads of AI now with clients and educate them on how we're doing this. And thus far, every head of AI has approved us to get involved because of these factors of, hey, it can be yours, you're not locked in. Um, Explainability, and you might also mean traceability there. Every verbal query comes with an answer, and those answers are traceable back to the detail. We even have a patent around how we highlight that source of data that backs up that answer. So we do that. Um, and here's another perhaps unexpected expectation from our clients. Because they know we've been in business 35 years and we have these experts, they don't want to suffer the delay of us not understanding their industry. So we work for a lot of large multi-site firms, and the chief procurement officer of a um, national, very large auto dealership. That's they're booming. They've been very successful in a very tough industry. That CPO said to me, "Well, I expect that you're going to know a lot of these terms already, or you're going to know how my industry works." So we do come to the table. We know the vernacular of a lot of industries, 11 industries, and they don't want us to be more expensive while we learn that new industry. So we call that our industry ontology. And so they can ultimately keep that in the end. Again, if they don't want to be locked into us, and they are not, they can also, quote unquote, have that industry ontology in the end as well.
Well, it's got to be very kind of I don't know, heartwarming when you kind of go into these large institutions and they haven't done an audit in 15 years and they don't know kind of what's going on. And I imagine that kind of that first report you guys pull, there's some, light bulbs going off. Give me some examples of kind of what you guys have seen operationally when that system, kind of surfaces something that large, that's been invisible for years.
Yeah, I think, first of all, our spend categories in the tail spend and even in the core spend space, we love the boring. And the audience in our procure to pay space, they don't call it our clients. They don't consider themselves boring. They just consider themselves fastidious, if you will. So I couldn't point to any of the 70 or 100 spend categories and make it sound sexy. So I'll pick the most exciting. I'll pick the waste realm. So, restaurants and retail organizations, even healthcare, uh, one hidden spend that is actually an enormous spend is waste. So recycling, um, any kind of waste, medical waste, etc. So with one client, they were spending about $9 million a year all over the country in waste. And we turned on SpendBrain, and within 2 weeks, we worked on it for 30 days just to be sure. We identified over 1.5 million in annual savings. And I won't go into all the ways that we discovered that savings, but back to me bragging on our experts, we think about crazy details when it comes to just to each and every spend category. And it often has nothing to do with price. It has a lot to do with what is purchased as well as price. And so, but yeah, we found a lot of errors. We found a lot of non-market competitiveness, if that's a way to say it. And that's available, to your point, it's available to almost every client. 900 new engagements a year, about 450 net new clients a year, and there's savings in every one of those engagements.
And you've delivered kind of these substantial, annual savings across your client base. Um, that really kind of means that, you kind of pay for yourself, doesn't it?
For sure, for sure. Yeah. And look, even the largest consulting firms in the world have now, over the last, say, 5 to 10 years, turned to this contingency model, whether in whole or in part. Uh, 35 years ago, 10 years ago, to your question earlier, 6 years ago, we were still 100% contingency based. Clients now are more sophisticated than that now. They don't wanna pay 100% contingency. So we're now more fixed fees, more services fees, more predictable fees, but we do see 6x to 25x or more on what we do, just because, look, we don't wanna do everything for a client. We wanna stick to our knitting here, work in the supply chain, procure to pay, sourcing space with our expertise, and just be that weapon for our clients.
Well, I think the pairing of kind of advanced AI and your human kind of involvement is really kind of central to that approach. How do you decide what the machine handles kind of autonomously versus what, kind of the human has to come back and validate, have that human in the loop?
Yeah, statement of the obvious for most of your audience. The spend area, procure to pay, supply chain, whatever that word cloud is, sourcing. Um, we're fortunate in that the data is relatively, I call it laminar. The data is relatively clean. Yes, we deal with unstructured data, like in the contracts or policies, and then semi-structured data that's in the invoices. But by starting with that data set, there is a lot that we can do with, quote unquote, I'll call it advanced technology, because AI has become kind of this term for a lot of things that are not AI, of course, as you know. Um, so that one thing we said to a client is, we can probably take the mundane work and reduce the time spent almost to zero on the mundane work. That way, our clients' teams can do more strategic work. I know that's an overused phrase, but it's true. So every one of our clients, even the most successful clients whose stock price is doing very well, when you start to talk to those clients underneath, they are hard at work trying to build the next thing or compete, develop a new product, develop a new customer experience. For our QSRs, our restaurant clients, they're trying to develop that next new menu item for the next quarter. And so their clients have said to us, they'll keep all their current people. We don't even, it never comes up labor savings. What comes up is, can I take my experts that I already have in house and have them do something totally different and more competitive? And it almost brings us to tears. We love it when they say that, because when they see what we can do, where look, as we say, our clients know all the questions they want to ask. They really do. They just can't get the answers out of their disparate data. And so we're helping them kind of crack that open. And I keep saying low cost. Cost matters to everything. It really does. And so they don't want to come in and spend millions of dollars a year on something like this. They want to be able to do this in an affordable way, and so that they can, they can get back to the strategic nature of their business.
Yeah, I think I've heard that from a lot of kind of AI leadership is that this isn't about reducing workforce. There's definitely that's going to happen. Unfortunately, a member of my family was part of the Oracle, where they were Oracle, I guess,
Yeah.
write down, whatever you want to call it.
Right. Right.
That was really a business decision where, they had to raise cash and take that money and spend it elsewhere. And what I see AI doing now more is enabling people to be more productive. And as you say, kind of get rid of that task work that I was doing every day. And now I can focus on something strategic. How am I going to build a better product? How am I going to get out to a customer? How am I going to satisfy that customer need better than I am today? And AI is certainly a great enabler with that. But it's really changing the whole economics of how knowledge work gets done across pretty much every sector. In cost intelligence specifically, what becomes possible in 5 years that's not possible today?
Yeah. Well, and I'll marry that with finishing the answer to your previous question, and that is both the vendors are innovating every day. They're coming up with new offerings. The clients, because they're innovating every day, they have new needs. And so you have to have an expert, and we're hiring pretty aggressively right now, even though we're private equity owned and we're not venture capital funded, which means we have to make money every quarter. We actually have to hit a number every quarter and make a profit. But we are hiring because you have to have that human in the loop. And again, like I described earlier, the client's expert is in the loop. We do not want the client, please do not. We say to clients all the time, please do not get rid of John or Sally. We need them on their side, teaching the brain, and then us on our side, because that turbulence between need and offerings, that'll never go away, thankfully. And so I think, 5 years from now, you're going to see some pretty amazing things. I think that these capabilities, like I've described, a quote unquote spin brain on the vendor side and the client side, you'll be able to use those brains to talk to each other for sure. And that's not a new thing. That's out in the domain already, where you have agents interacting with each other. But again, we see no possibility of totally removing the humans from that, the experts from that. One joke that we've said internally is, if we even say this to our children, go get a job and understand some industry really well first. Go something physical, whether it's in supply chain or, something in the vendor community. Go understand that industry really well. It could be software, but then you'll sort of empower yourself or outfit yourself to play in this crazy AI world.
Yeah, it definitely is an accelerator on your own expertise if you have that expertise, and I know it's been liberating for me because it gives you so many new capabilities you just didn't have time to learn. You know,
Correct.
I didn't
Yeah,
have time to learn to code. I wish I would have when I was 17, but I'm not anymore. So I've
right.
got other things to do, and
Correct.
and so you're almost limited because it was like, oh, I could go do that, and that's an investment, but now it's less of an investment and it's a little bit of an investment in time. But now that I can send my agent out to do these things, it's really liberating. It's really liberating.
Correct. Especially if you well, there you've probably read about how if you're thinking quote unquote LLM only, how the LLMs are, whether this is true or not, but it's out in the it's out in the attention sphere, that the LLMs like to sort of confidently support your question by giving you answers that may not be totally right. And so, of course, in our model, we avoid that with our clients. Of course, it's got to be correct and accurate. But I guess my point is that, yeah, you really do need to be an on the ground human to human expert first before you can start learning from these, and again, the LLMs are going to evolve and become better and better over time. Um, but yeah, it's a crazy new world.
Now, if we've got CFOs listening out there who are like, I probably have some cost leakage out there that I'm not catching, other than calling SIB and SpendBrain. What's the first thing they should do this Monday morning if they know they've got something kind of leaking?
I would say to a CFO, follow your gut. Because what we're finding is CFOs, heads of supply chain, I kind of referenced it earlier, they really do know their data. They know it. They intuitively know where problems are. Just go attack that one piece of intuition on day one, use the people you have, because it's better for us, frankly. Um, what's exciting, what what is the most fun we have on a given day is when we talk to a client, say a CFO. Of course, the intuition is there. The questions they have are there. Where they think the problems are, that's already there. But what gets even better than that is they've already experimented a little bit with AI. They've done something already, and they've said, I kind of got this to work, but it's not doing it completely. We had a big state of California institution describe it this way, and I'll be really brief. I won't name the name, but what they said is they had bought a bunch of stuff. They bought 4 or 5 different things to solve a really big problem, about a $45 million a year problem, just for one location. California is enormous, of course, as we know, bigger than Texas for sure.
Fourth largest economy in the world, right?
Correct. And what they said to us is, we've tried a bunch of things and we've spent a lot of money and we still can't get the answers out of all of this capability we've purchased. And we said, wow, wow, first of all. And yes, we're not just saying this, you're missing one element. You've got to like invest enough into building your own quote unquote brain in order for you to be able to understand that data that you have. You can't just throw disparate systems at it. So, um, again, some clients are very, very advanced already and don't need us. But when even those clients, when they realize, no, we're trying to be very pragmatic here and low cost and also move really fast, even some of those clients, they'll choose a firm like us.
That's amazing.
Scrappy industries is my favorite phrase.
Well, I think that's where we are right now, and it's a lot of people are figuring out what we can do with this, and it certainly seems like you guys have done that in a pretty significant way. So congratulations on all the hard work and effort. I'm sure it's paying off on the bottom line too, but congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for paying attention to us. We're excited.